Assalamu alaikum, good evening and welcome to tonight's episode of Talking Point from our London studios. We have been joined over Skype by eminent journalist Dr. Syed Badrul Ahsan. He is editor of Asian Age Dhaka. Welcome to the show, Badr bhai.
Thank you. It's wonderful to link up again.
And so kind of you. And we have in our studios Rina Mosharraf, a social activist based in London, and she has some very fond memories of Bangladesh, where she has spent her childhood, and in Dhanmandi, very close to where Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujib used to live. So she will share some of her memories with us. Sir, we wanted to talk about November in the history of Bangladesh. Any month is of importance to any particular country because so many things happen every month, every day. Like this month, November, is sort of ingrained in the hearts of Bangladeshi people because of so many happenings and that are related to Bangabandhu and people. What do you think the most remarkable, most impactful event has been so far in the history of Bangladesh? Badr bhai.
Well, thank you for your question, and thank you for having me on the program. As we have observed throughout our history of the last 50 years, and even going back to the period before the War of Liberation, I think the most impactful, some of the most impactful events or incidents that we have regularly dealt with in our country, first of all, has been the Declaration of Independence on the 26th of March, and then, of course, the tragedy of the 9 months of the Liberation War, in which we lost 3 million of our people, and 200 women were violated. Their chastity was violated by the occupation Pakistani forces. And then, of course, after the achievement of independence, we refer to January 10, 1972, the return home of the father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, from Pakistani captivity. And after that, if you notice, we have only the other day, November the 4th, today is the 6th of November, the day before yesterday, it's a day that people tend to forget. It's Constitution Day, because on November 4, 1972, the Constitution of Bangladesh was adopted and ratified. It came into implementation on the 16th of December that year. Having said that, since we are meeting today, November the 6th of November, now this happens to be in post-liberation, in the post-liberation history of Bangladesh. It's a very sad month, and today we are here, we are gathered here to discuss a very sad incident. In fact, a series of sad incidents. On the 3rd of November, 1975, the 4 principal leaders of the Mujibnagar government in 1971, they were done to death in Dhaka Central Jail. So one expects jail to be a secure place, a place where people are provided with security. But then that security was violated by the same coup makers who had dislodged Bangabandhu's government in a violent coup in August of 1975. Then, 4 days later, the 7th of November, which is tomorrow, the attempt by General Khalid Mosharraf and his colleagues in the army to bring back the chain of command in Bangladesh, in the army, and also restore normalcy in a country which had been in a state of a deep worry, in a state of darkness from August.
This chain of command, because the young majors who were sitting in Bango Bhavan and issuing orders from there, ignoring the brigade headquarters, the general headquarters, and everybody else, the administration, the secretariat, they were ignoring everybody else, and they were acting as if they were running the country with the help of Mr. Mushtaq, right?
Of course, and that is a strange thing to happen when you have a full-fledged army, you have a full-fledged armed forces, you have senior officers of the rank of major general or lieutenant general or even full generals. We have that army, we still, as we do today, but these majors and colonels, they seized the country, they commandeered the country, and that is something unacceptable and unforgivable. So what General Khalid Mosharraf was trying to do from between the 3rd November and the early 7th of November was to bring back discipline not only in the army but also within the country. Because today, see, if we recall, today is the 6th of November. On this day in 1975, General Mosharraf successfully pushed Khandakar Mushtaq Ahmed out of the presidency and had the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Justice A.S.M. Syed, installed as president. But the very next day, of course, he and two of his colleagues, they were brutally murdered, and we still have not been able to identify those killers or bring them to book. Now that, you see, this issue needs a closure through proper justice. Now we have had a trial of Bangabandhu's assassins, but then we still have other trials to be gone through. The trial,
pending,
trial of the killers of the 4 leaders, and the trial of General Mosharraf and his military colleagues on November 7. So this impact of these 2 days, November, the month of November, 3rd November and 7th November,
yeah,
are part of the tragic pattern of history that we have seen take over Bangladesh, and we are still to get out of it.
But does it seem very striking that the young majors and the colonels, they assumed sort of power and they're issuing orders, and there were senior persons, there were commander-in-chief of the army. He was completely out of picture at that moment and remained so, and had remained so until today, because nothing concrete, substantial has come out. What was his role and what did he do to stop this or to bring them back to the barracks, and they should have been court-martialed for whatever they did. See, nothing happened. See, even the Ziaur Rahman, he was a senior, probably second in command of the army. He was quiet. The chief of army was General Shafiullah. There was no news about him. Then we had Rakhi Bahini. Where were they? We do not know. And Rakhi Bahini was heavily armed. Our army had arms, and yet seemed that just these 3-4 colonels and majors assumed power, took over, and they were ruling the roost. You see, and all the senior army officers were quiet. See, it seemed like whether they were part of it or they were subdued somehow, or there was a greater conspiracy, and that's why they kept quiet. We still do not know, as you suggested, that there should be an inquiry.
Definitely, there should be an inquiry, and well, these majors and colonels, they seized power, but then it will be naive to assume that they were the only people who were involved, because behind them there was a vast conspiracy. If you go back to a theory of what was happening, because we know that in November 1974, Khandakar Mushtaq, he was commerce minister in Bangabandhu's cabinet, if you recall. Khandakar Mushtaq sent a few of these people who would later become killers to General Zia, who was deputy chief of army staff, wanting him to join them in the coup. And General Zia, he of course told them that he could not be part of the coup, and he told them, do whatever you think should be done. Now you see, this was an act of treason. Here is a man who is deputy chief of army staff, and here are these future killers going to him, and he should have reported it to the government. He should have had them arrested, and in other words, he encourages them. This happened in November 1974. A few months later, in March 1975, when Khondaka Mushtaq again sent these two people, again Zia said the same thing. So on the morning of the coup, you see, now this is very intriguing. On the morning of the coup, the last individual with whom Bangabandhu had a conversation was the Army Chief of Staff, General K.M. Shafiullah. And reportedly, General Shafiullah asked Bangabandhu, sir, can you come out of the house? Now this was a rather naive question.
Come out of the house from the back door, using the back door.
See, throughout his political career, Bangabandhu had been arrested. You see, he spent almost 13 years in jail. Every time he was at home, when the police and the army in Pakistani times came to arrest him,
he never ran away. Never ran away.
He never ran away. And here the army chief is asking him if he can come out of the house. You don't expect the president of the country, the founder, the father of the nation, to jump over the wall and try to escape. But that was one question. And then the other thing is, General Zia, he was shaving in the morning. He was half shaven when he was told by a junior officer that Bangabandhu had been killed, and he was very nonchalant about it. And he simply said, "So what? The vice president is there." But see, the other strange thing, the strangest thing of all on August 15 is that Bangabandhu was killed before Fajr prayers, and then 4.5 hours, if not 5 hours.
Yes, for 4 and 5 hours there was no communication. We did not know what was happening there at his house. See. Yes, after Bangabandhu's Rina ji, after Bangabandhu's assassination, and a few months later, I understand that your mother, Mrs. Jamila Mosharraf, and your brother, Khalid Mosharraf, Rashid Mosharraf, and other young people mostly, took out a procession. Do you remember anything about that?
হ্যাঁ, তখন তো সাংঘাতিক উচ্ছৃঙ্খলা যেটাকে বলে, সবাই তখন পালিয়ে গেছে, কেউ কোথাও নাই। যখন বঙ্গবন্ধুকে মারা হয়েছে, কেউ তার আশেপাশের লোকরা সব মনে হয় কোথায় পালিয়ে গেছিল। কিন্তু এই রাশেদ মোশাররফ, খালিদ মোশাররফের, জেনারেল খালিদ মোশাররফের ছোট ভাই, উনিও 6 বার এমপি, একজন বঙ্গবন্ধুর ভীষণ স্নেহভাজন। উনিই প্রথম পলিটিক্সে বঙ্গবন্ধুই ওনাকে পলিটিক্সে নিয়ে আসছে। তারপরে ওনার খালিদ মোশাররফের সঙ্গে তারপরে ওনার পরিচয়। খালিদ মোশাররফ, রাশেদ মোশাররফের থ্রুতেই খালিদ মোশাররফ আসছেন। যখন আমাদের বঙ্গবন্ধুকে এইভাবে, তার ফ্যামিলিকে, তাদের আত্মার মাগফিরাত করুক আল্লাহ, তাদের পরিবারকে কেউ কাছে আসেনি, তখন খালিদ মোশাররফের মা, রাশেদ মোশাররফের মা প্রথম মিছিল নিয়ে বের হয়েছিল। সেটাই যতটুকু আমি জানি, আমরা তখন অনেক ইয়াং। বাট তারপরে তো ওনাকে যে টঙ্গী পাড়ায় যে কিভাবে কিছু লোককে তো বনানীতে ওনাকে কবর দিয়েছেন, আর বঙ্গমাতা আর আমাদের বঙ্গবন্ধুকে টঙ্গীপাড়ায় একটা কাপড়ে ওনাকে ইয়ে করা, কবর দেওয়া হয়েছে। সাংঘাতিক, এখন ডিসকাশন করতে গেলেও অনেক দুঃখের বিষয় আর কি। তো
আপনার যে ভাই রাশেদ মোশাররফ, ওনার সম্বন্ধে কিছু বলবেন? কারণ বেশি লোকরা জানে না। হ্যাঁ, উনি 6 বার এমপি হয়েছেন, মন্ত্রীও ছিলেন, ভূমিমন্ত্রী ছিলেন, কিন্তু উনি আবার শেখ সাহেব ওনাকে ছোটকাল থেকেই গ্রুম করেছিলেন। শেখ সাহেবের কথায় উনি আইয়ুব খানের সময় যে বেসিক ডেমোক্রেসি যে ইলেকশন হয়েছিল, রাশেদ মোশাররফ ওইখানে বিডি মেম্বার হলেন, চেয়ারম্যান হলেন, তারপরে এমপি হইলেন।
তো আমি অনেক পুরোনো দিনে তাহলে চলে যেতে হবে। রাশেদ মোশাররফ তখন স্কুলে পড়ে, ম্যাট্রিকও উনি বোধহয় দেননি। আর বঙ্গবন্ধু, উনি তখন বঙ্গবন্ধু ছিলেন না, কিন্তু শেখ মুজিব তাকে সবাই চিনত। হ্যাঁ, উনি নেতা আমাদের। উনি মিরপুরের রাস্তার এই পারে 32 নম্বরে ছিলেন, আর এই পাশে ছিল রাশেদ মোশাররফ, খালিদ মোশাররফের বাবা। উনিও লয়ার, একজন বিজনেসম্যান, মোশাররফ হোসেন, আর তার ওয়াইফ। তো রাস্তার এই পার ওই পার লেক ছিল তখন, নতুন নতুন একদম খোলা মেলা। আমাদের বঙ্গবন্ধু বঙ্গমাতা দুজনেই মর্নিং ওয়াক করতে যেত ওখানে। আমার মা বাবা আমার ভাই বোনরা সারাক্ষণ ওয়াকেই যেত লেকে। ওইখানে সামহাও কলাবাগান, আমরা মেন কলাবাগানের লোক। কলাবাগানের নাম সবাই জানে, বঙ্গবন্ধুর একটা মানে আসল জায়গা। ওখান থেকেই কিন্তু ধানমন্ডি গরিলা ওখান থেকেই শুরু হয়েছে। তখন থেকেই রাশিদ মোশাররফকে বঙ্গবন্ধু খুব পছন্দ করতেন। তারপরে বলল যে তুমি ম্যাট্রিক তখন হয়ে গেছে, ইন্টার করছিলেন, তো 18 বছর হয়ে গেছে। তখন আইয়ুব খানের সময় বোধহয় ছিল বেসিক ডেমোক্রেসির মানে ইলেকশন, তখন লোকাল ইলেকশনের মতো। তো উনি আমার ভাইকে রাশিদ মোশাররফকে উনি নমিনেশন দিলেন। আমার বাবা তো আশ্চর্য যে রাশিদ মোশাররফের মতো লোককে একটা ইয়াং ছেলে বলে, না এরা তো আমার ছেলে। উনি এই হিসাবে মানে আমরা যে কত কাছের মানুষ ছিলাম এইটা এখনকার কেউ জানবে না। রাশিদ মোশাররফকেও কেউ চিনবে না, আর জেনারেল খালিদ মোশাররফকেও কেউ চিনবে না। তারা যে বঙ্গবন্ধুর ডান হাত ছিল, তো কিছু কিছু ঘটনা, অনেক ঘটনাই আছে। তো উনি ওই হিসাবেই নমিনেশন পেলেন এবং সিলেক্টেডও হলেন, মাশাআল্লাহ জয়ী হলেন। তখন থেকেই আমরা আওয়ামী লীগের সঙ্গে, বঙ্গবন্ধুর সঙ্গে, এইটুক আমার যথেষ্ট মনে আছে, কারণ আমরা অনেক ইয়াং ছিলাম তখন।
আচ্ছা, থ্যাংক ইউ। আমাদের একটা ব্রেক টাইম, তারপর ব্রেক টাইমের পরে আপনার সঙ্গে আবার আলাপ করব। Thank you viewers for being with us, and we need to take a short break, and when we come back we'll pick up the thread. Don't go away, we'll be back soon. Welcome back. Just before the break we were talking to Rina Mosharraf about Bangladesh and Bangabandhu and the days of 1975. Right now we are going to watch a video. It's a short clip of oath-taking ceremony at Mujibnagar. Can we have that video, please?
The army of General Yahya Khan had failed to crush the spirit of the people of East Bengal. It was freedom or death.
সজ্ঞানে সুস্থ শরীরে শপথ করিতেছি যে আমি আমার প্রাণের বিনিময়ে হইল আইনগতভাবে গঠিত প্রতিনিধিত্বশীল।
In the name of Almighty God, I swear to be loyal to the Sovereign Republic of Bangladesh. With my life, I shall protect the freedom of my motherland.
আমি আরো শপথ করিতেছি যে মুক্তি বাহিনীর একজন সৈনিক হিসাবে আমার মাতৃভূমির স্বাধীনতা সার্বভৌমিত্ব রক্ষার্থে সর্বশক্তি নিয়োগ করিব।
Right. Syed Badrul Ahsan Sahab, you saw this video. Does it remind you
Yes.
of something? Meherpur, have you been there?
No, I haven't been to Meherpur, but then I clearly remember those days of 1971 when the entire country went to war, 75 million people. And this footage that we just saw, it brings back a whole lot of memories. All those hundreds and thousands of young men from the cities and especially from our villages,
Yeah.
they simply went off to the war without anybody asking them to join the war.
And they are full of a spirit. Though they are not armed properly, they are full of a spirits.
Absolutely. And they went there, and then we saw this footage of these young men with arms, some without arms, raising slogans. And of course, General Khalid Mosharraf, this is one footage I remember because I think it appears in a documentary called Khalid's War. if I'm not making a mistake.
Yeah.
So you see, so these incidents, the war itself and the formation of the Mujibnagar government, these are seminal events in our history. Seminal in the sense that for the first time in Bengali history, we had a Bengali government run by Bengali leaders.
Yeah.
So unprecedented, never before in our history have we had a government of our own, led by our own fellow
people,
Bengalis, all people. And the other important thing about, after seeing this footage, is that the people like General Khalid Mosharraf, they were trained as regular soldiers in the Pakistan army. I'm sure they had never conceived of a situation where they would have to wage a guerrilla war. But then they defied the Pakistan army, they rebelled against the Pakistan army, and then they brilliantly conducted a guerrilla war for 9 long months. And this is where we need to give them credit for. Unfortunately, the history, we keep talking about history in our country, but then these details of history, who went to war, who did what, who commanded what kind of troops, in what situation, these things need to be taught to our younger generation. And personally, I believe that we need to we need to do a whole lot more research on such people, on such illustrious people, politicians as well as military officers, soldiers, the Mukti Bahini, and books should be written on them, which should be included in our syllabi in our schools, colleges, and universities. So that, this is my feeling about Khalid Mosharraf. But then the irony is, we have, it's said that every revolution consumes its heroes, and we have had no better instance of this than our own Bangladesh. In independent Bangladesh, Bangabandhu was killed. The Pakistanis tried to put him away for so many times. They couldn't do it. We saw him die, and he was killed by his fellow Bengalis.
Yeah,
then
our own trained army.
Our own trained army. And then General Khalid Mosharraf, he has the reputation of being the most brilliant tactician in the war of liberation. He was also put to death, and we still don't know who ordered his death. That has not been, that question has not been answered at all. I won't say to satisfaction, not at all. So we need to go back to all these incidents, and we need to come away with credible explanations.
Well, it is not possible for one person to do that, isn't it? It has to be a corporate effort backed by the authority of the administration, so that all the loose ends can be brought together, all the information that has been lost, they can be gathered, and if there are any papers, any documents that can be assessed, and without that the history will not be complete, not the complete picture of the history. So what do we do in these circumstances? We just go on every year, we talk about, some of us talk about these things, and we move on, see, because it's like printing a newspaper, the headline and the deadline. Tomorrow there's a different story, and the next day is a different story. See. So we move, we have to move with times, but history is very important. We cannot forget our past if we have to plan our future. Right, sir?
Absolutely, because it's, you see, observing certain days of the year in a formal way, that's okay. But at the same time, we must also know for ourselves and for our children, for our grandchildren, for the generations to be, what actually happened. Now, see, it has always been my feeling. See, I've always believed in it, that when those renegade soldiers went to Bangabandhu's residence and killed him and his family, it was not just a few officers who went and killed them. There was a truckload of soldiers, simple soldiers, who went with them. Now, I'm sure many, if not all, many of these soldiers are still alive. They must have got old in the last 35 years. But then they need to be identified and they also need to answer for their crimes. In the same way, the people who killed the 4 leaders in jail, many of them are still alive. And as for General Mosharraf and his two, Colonel Huda and Colonel ATM Haidar, you can rest assured that although we say these senior officers, people like Ziaur Rahman and all the other officers, we believe they were behind their killing. That is a fact. But then who else was there? Who pulled the trigger? Who killed them? I'm sure these people are there. And the government, if this government is a government led by a party which fought the war of liberation, it is up to them. It is for them to undertake a program that will unearth these ugly realities.
To set the records right, because if they don't, who will?
Exactly, because the way we have seen history move in Bangladesh, we have history, we have had anti-history. We began with secularism, and then other people take over. They seize the state, and then they give us. You see, they tell us that we are not Bengalis anymore. It is not Bengali nationalism. It is Bangladeshi nationalism. Now these mistakes, these corrections, these aberrations need to be set right, and only a government of the kind that we have at present can do it. A government loyal to the principles of the 1971 war. That's important.
One of the politicians murdered in the prison, Mr. Tajuddin Ahmad, you have written a book about him, his biography, isn't it? So,
right.
Could you throw some light on his life? See, not much is known about him. Because he was probably second in command, so he was kept in shadows, or remained in shadows, anonymous. Not many people knew about him.
So I think the time has come for all of us to go into a broader understanding, broader research in history. Now, our people, young, middle-aged, and old, we all need to be reminded or to be retold the history of the Mujibnagar government. Every year we observe on 17th April the anniversary of the Mujibnagar government. But under what circumstances the government was formed, who formed it, the leadership of Tajuddin Ahmed. Tajuddin was a very brilliant politician. He was the right-hand man of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. And you see, he brilliantly conducted the war. Because had Tajuddin not been there, history would have been different. We can't say how different it might have been. But then because Tajuddin was there, because he knew what needed to be done in the war, he shaped the guerrilla war. He ran a civil administration at the time. He also supervised the constitution of the formation of the 11 sectors of the guerrilla war. He understood the realities, and it's said about him that when he crossed over to India, when he escaped from Dhaka, see, it was the idea of forming a government that worked in his mind. He went to India, he met Mrs. Gandhi, he formed a government. Of course, we know from our historical studies that there were many people within the movement itself, within the liberation movement itself, who were opposed to him, and they did everything to pull him down. And later on, of course, we saw him work as a finance minister under Bangabandhu. And then unfortunately, the differences developed between him and Bangabandhu, and they parted ways. But then there's also the other fact which I need to mention. I met Dr. Kamal Hussain, who was foreign minister, first law minister and then foreign minister in Bangabandhu's government. And I interviewed him. It was not exactly an interview. We were having a good conversation in his office about a couple of years ago. And then he said, Dr. Kamal Hussain told me that he was on his way. He was about to leave Dhaka for a tour of Europe at the end of July 1975. And Bangabandhu wished him well and then told him to see to it that the visit went well. He would visit some European countries, including Germany and Yugoslavia. And just as Dr. Kamal Hussain was leaving Ganabhavan, Bangabandhu called him back and told him, I have good news for you. When you come back, you'll see something good that has happened. And Kamal Hussain asked him, what was that good news? And Bangabandhu told him, I've been talking to Tajuddin. Tajuddin will return to the government. See, So these things were happening. So all these facts should also be noted and put down together. And we need, what I would like to say at this point is, the war of 1971, the Liberation War, was our greatest achievement. But we also need, while we talk about the war, we also need to reflect on the careers of the men who were there. For example, you mentioned Mr. Tajuddin Ahmed. His life needs to be focused. His career needs to be focused, along with the three other leaders who died with him. At the same time, the conspiratorial elements who were there, men like Khandukar Mushtaq, those also, I think, positive and negative, everything has to be brought to light. So that's the way I feel that history should be, I'm not saying restructured, history should be written in greater, broader detail.
Who will be interested in writing the history?
That is, yes, true. But that is one issue, because we have, I think it should be the work of public intellectuals and academics, and there should be more research done, and we should encourage our young scholars in the different universities who study the university, who study politics, who study history. It should be for them. All the archives should be open, and they should, the task of a historian should always be unbiased. You and I may have political opinions. We may support a political party or the other. But when we talk of history, when we write history, or when we reflect on history, that should be absolutely non-partisan. That should be very objective history. Because if you don't have political propaganda, and propaganda can never be history.
That will be like the Chinese Red Book rather than history.
Yes, the little red book. Yes.
Well, it's about time for us to take a break, sir, and then when we come back, we would talk more about the month of November. November is also the month when Charles Darwin published his
yes.
the
origin of
yes, but we will also talk about other things. Thank you, viewers, for being with us.
Maybe I can have a couple of questions also for Mrs. Rina Mosharraf.
Right, inshallah. When we come back. Thank you for being with us. We'll be back soon after this short break. Thank you. Welcome back. Just before the break, we were talking to our distinguished guest today, Syed Badrul Ahsan, editor of Asian Age, Dhaka, and a writer and a historian of repute. Sir, we were talking about the 4 leaders who were assassinated at Dhaka Central Jail in the month of November. That was 3rd, I hope, I suppose. We do not know much about the other 3. We have heard of Mr. Tajuddin, who was probably the second in command after Sheikh Mujib, but the other 3 persons, Captain Mansoor and Syed Nazrul Islam and I forget the name.
Mr. Kamrul.
Kamrul Zaman.
Yes. See. So who were these 3 persons, and I know that they contributed a lot, see, but as it is that a lot of things has been lost, and not much is mentioned of these very distinguished politicians.
That I think we must bear the consequences of the failure to articulate our ideas about these 4 leaders. Mr. Tajuddin Ahmed has been written about, has been spoken about, but Syed Nazrul Islam, Captain Mansoor Ali, and A.H.M. Kamrul Zaman, they were also important leaders at that time. You see, Mr. Kamrul Zaman, A.H.M. Kamrul Zaman, in the 1960s, when Ayub Khan was Pakistan's president, he was an Awami League member of the Pakistan National Assembly, which used to meet twice a year, once in Dhaka, once in Rawalpindi. And Mr. Mansoor Ali, he was also a very well-known politician at that time. Syed Nazrul Islam was a lifelong Awami Leaguer. He began life as a teacher, but then joined politics. So all these 4 men, Mr. Tajuddin Ahmed, Syed Nazrul Islam, Captain Mansoor Ali, and Mr. A.H.M. Kamrul Zaman, together with Bongo Bandhu, they were responsible for the formulation of the 6-point program for regional autonomy, and then carrying the movement forward in Bangabandhu's absence to absolute liberation in 1971. So research should be done on these 3 other leaders, on all 4 of them, but especially we don't know. I mean, our people, the younger generation, doesn't know much about Syed Nazrul Islam, Mr. Kamruzaman, or Captain Mansoor Ali. So it should be our job to let people know what they did. In the same way that more research, in fact, and more analysis should be done on the sector commanders, the brilliant soldiers who organized the Mukti Bahini, who fought for the war, who fought during the war, and especially since we are talking about the war today, I think we need much more research on General Khalid Mosharraf's life and career. He joined the Pakistan Army. In what circumstances did he defect, and how did he organize the army? And in independent Bangladesh, what were the forces that conspired against him and led to his life being ended? And why haven't we yet been able to do justice in his case by bringing his killers and other killers to justice? We need closure, but then closure means you actually go through a process of justice before, let's say, before that closure can take place. So that's it. I mean, that's my opinion. But then, in a sense, Mrs. Rina Mosharraf is here, and she is the younger sister of General Khalid Mosharraf.
She is the only surviving sibling of the family.
Yes. So, if it's okay, can I ask her a couple of questions?
Sure.
বাংলায় বলি নাকি?
হ্যাঁ, বাংলাতেই।
Okay. So, ভাবি, আসসালামু আলাইকুম।
আসসালামু আলাইকুম ভাই, আপনার কথাগুলো শুনলাম। অনেক
আপনি এসেছেন, সৌভাগ্য। আমরা তো সবসময় আমরা নিজেরা বই থেকে তথ্য সংগ্রহ করি, নিজেরা কিছু লেখার চেষ্টা করি এই বিভিন্ন ব্যক্তি সম্বন্ধে, গুরুত্বপূর্ণ জাতীয় ব্যক্তি সম্বন্ধে। আপনি তো সেই পরিবারের সদস্য, ছোট বোন, আপনি সবচাইতে ছোট বোন এবং দি অনলি সার্ভাইভিং সিস্টার। আপনার স্মৃতিতে প্রথম প্রশ্ন হলো, জেনারেল খালেদ মোশাররফ, আপনার স্মৃতিতে আপনি যখন ওনার কথা স্মরণ করেন, প্রত্যেকদিন স্মরণ করেন অবশ্য, আপনার কি মনে হয়, তার সম্বন্ধে আপনার ধারণা কি? অ্যাজ এ সিস্টার, বোন ভাইকে কিভাবে দেখছেন?
অনেক অনেক ধন্যবাদ, কারণ আপনি মানে এই টকিং পয়েন্টে আসার জন্য নিয়াজ আহমেদ সাহেবকে অনেক রিকোয়েস্ট করেছিলেন। আমি আসতে চাইনি, কিন্তু আপনার কথায় আমি চাই না, বদরুল ভাই বলেছে আমি আসব। আপনি যেই প্রশ্নগুলো করলেন আর আমাকে এখানে আসার জন্য, তার জন্য অশেষ ধন্যবাদ। প্রথম কথা হলো, আপনি যে আমার ভাইয়ের সম্বন্ধে বললেন, উনি আমাদের ফাদার ফিগার ছিলেন, কারণ আমরা অনেক ডিফারেন্স, এজ ডিফারেন্স ছিল আমাদের। উনি, আমার বাবা ইজ এ ভেরি গুড, মানে বিগ বিজনেসম্যান, তো আমার বাবা বেশ ওল্ড ছিল। তো আমরা যত কিছু ফ্যামিলির আবদার এই ভাইয়ের কাছেই, আমাদের সমস্ত কিছু। ইভেন আমরা তখন এত ছোট ছিলাম, এত ডিফারেন্ট। আমার ভাই ক্যাপ্টেন হয়ে গেছে, তখন আমরা স্কুলে পড়ি, তো তখন ওনার কাছে যত কিছু পাওনা যেটি ফ্যামিলির, আমরা ওই ভাইয়ের কাছেই যে আবদার করতাম। সেই ভাই যখন, মানে আমার মার 3 মেয়ের পরে আমার প্যারেন্টস, মানে আমরা 5 বোন 2 ভাই, তো 3 বোনের পরে ভাই হয় না। মক্কাতে উট কুরবানি দিয়ে আমার এই ভাই পয়দা হয়েছে, মানে এত এত আদরের ভাই। সেই ভাই এইভাবে চলে যাবে, এত ইয়াং, 38 মাত্র ওনার বয়স ছিল। মানে এটা আমার মা যে কি, মানে কিভাবে নিয়েছে, এটা এখন পর্যন্ত আমি এটা ফিল করি আমার মার, কারণ আমার মা কিছুদিন বেঁচে ছিল, তারপরে উনি আর মানে বেশি দিন বাঁচেননি উনি। সবচেয়ে বড় কথা, উনি, ওনার একটা কথাই আমার মনে পড়ে আর কি, আমার ভাই, আমার মা বলতেন যে একটা ছেলেকে আমি দেশের জন্য দিয়েছি, আর একটা ছেলেকে আমি জনসেবা করো। রাশেদ মোশাররফ বললো জনসেবা করার জন্য, আর খালিদ মোশাররফকে দিয়েছিলেন দেশ সেবা করে। সত্যি উনি দিয়েছিলেন। আমার মা বিরাট সোশ্যাল ওয়ার্কার ছিল, উনি অনেক কাজ করে গেছেন। এমন মানে ওনার ম্যাটারনিটি করেছিলেন, তারপরে স্কুল কলেজ এখন চলছে, ম্যাটারনিটিটা ঠিক মতো চলতে পারছে না, আমরা যে চেষ্টা করতেছি এখন ইনশাআল্লাহ দেখি ফিউচারে কি হয়, কারণ রাশেদ মোশাররফও চলে গেছেন, উনিও নাই, তো আমরা এখন পরিবারের কেউ আমাদের মাথা নাই আর কি। আর খালিদ মোশাররফের সম্বন্ধে তো আপনারা সব কিছুই জানেন, আমার নতুন করে বলার কিছু নাই। উনি দেশের জন্য গুলি খেয়েছেন, প্রাণ দিয়েছেন, কিন্তু সেই দেশেই এসে যেমন বঙ্গবন্ধুকেও লোকরা শেষ করেছে, ওরকম ঠিক খালিদ মোশাররফকেও প্রাণ দিতে হয়েছে। তো তাই আপনার কাছে, আপনি এত বড় একজন সাংবাদিক, এত বড় রাইটার, আপনারা লেখেন, এই চার নেতার সম্বন্ধে লেখেন, কিছু জানান, এই নতুন প্রজন্মকে জানাতে হবে সত্যি ঘটনাটা কি। কেউ জানে না এখন হিস্ট্রি, আমাদের বাংলাদেশে হিস্ট্রি একদম ডিভাইডেড। এখন আমরা মাননীয় প্রধানমন্ত্রীর কাছেও আমাদের অনুরোধ যে এইসব নেতার জন্য আস্তে আস্তে হচ্ছে, চার নেতা অনেক রিকগনিশন পেয়েছে, কিন্তু খালিদ মোশাররফের কোনো রিকগনিশন হয়নি। আমরা চাই একটু মূল্যায়ন, ওনার নামে কিছু হোক, লোকে জানবে, বাচ্চারা বুঝবে। কিছু নাই, একটা না ক্যান্টনমেন্ট, না এয়ারপোর্ট। তো ভাই এইসব আমার অনুরোধ আর কি। অনেক অনেক ফ্যামিলিতে উনি অনেক কষ্ট, ওনার দুটো মেয়েকে 1 বছরের, মানে 1 জন আর 2 বছরের, এই 2 মেয়েকে পাকিস্তান আর্মি নিয়ে গেছিল ক্যান্টনমেন্টে। আপনি নিশ্চয়ই জানেন এটা, এই ঘটনাটা। 1 বছর মা বাপ ক্যান্টনমেন্ট থেকে ওনাকে, পরে ডাক্তার মনসুরকে নিশ্চয়ই মহাখালী রিসার্চ সেন্টার, কলেরা রিসার্চ সেন্টার, হ্যাঁ উনি ডাইরেক্টর ছিলেন। সামহাও কেউ ক্যান্টনমেন্টে অ্যাডমিনিস্ট্রেশনে ছিল, উনি যে সংবাদ দিল যে এইরকম দুটো মেয়ে, খালিদ মোশাররফের মেয়ে দুটোকে ক্যান্টনমেন্টে রাখা হয়েছে, তো উনি শুনেই বলল যে এটা তো সাংঘাতিক কথা, এতটুক বাচ্চা পাকিস্তান আর্মির কাছে ঢাকা ক্যান্টনমেন্টে। আপনি দেখেন এটা কারো, এত যে অনেক বড় বড় নেতা বের হয়েছে আমি স্বীকার করব, কিন্তু এই জিনিসটা এত বড় সাংঘাতিক দুঃখের বেদনায়, আপনি একজন রাইটার মানুষ, আপনার মনেও এই দুঃখটা লাগবে। সেই বাচ্চাদেরকে উনি যে কিভাবে নিয়ে আসছেন ডক্টর মনসুর, ওটা আরেকটা কাহিনী, মানে বিরাট কাহিনী। ওই কাহিনী বলতে গেলে আরেকটা ঘটনা হয়ে যাবে। তারপরে উনি নিয়ে আসলেন, অনেক বন্ড সই করে টোরে নিয়ে আসলেন, ওনার কাছে রাখলেন। কিন্তু মাঝখানে একজন, মানে আমার ভাই খবর পেলেন খালিদ মোশাররফ কেমন করে জানি, তারপরে উনি ওখান থেকে আলম, বাদল, জালাল এদেরকে ওই পাঠানো হলো ঢাকায় তার বাহিনী গ্রুপ থেকে। সেই বাচ্চাদের মধ্যে একটা বাচ্চাকে মিসেস মনসুর, জাহানারা মনসুরকে গুলি করতে হলো, নাহলে এই বন্ড যে পাকিস্তান আর্মিকে বন্ড দিয়ে আসছে, নাহলে তো মানে ওনার পুরা ফ্যামিলিকে তো ওরা নিয়ে যাবে। তো উনি জোর প্রিটেন্ড করতে হলো, অভিনয় করে দেখাইতে হলো সত্যি ওনার পায়ে গুলি মেরে ওই বাচ্চা, একটা বাচ্চাকে নিয়ে যেতে পারলো আর একটা বাচ্চাকে নিয়ে। সেই বাচ্চা এখন এখানে লন্ডনে আছে বড়, ওকেও আমরা আগামীতে নিয়ে আসবো, আপনার সঙ্গে কথা বলাবো। এইসব ঘটনার কথা মানে অনেক অনেক এই ধরনের অনেক মানে অনেক ঘটনা আছে, কিন্তু আমরা ওই মূল্যায়ন পাইনি এখনো আমরা কিছু মূল্যায়ন।
আমি আমার আরেকটি প্রশ্ন আছে, আমরা নিয়াজ ভাই, ডু উই হ্যাভ টাইম?
No, we have about 3 minutes.
তাহলে আমি ভাবি কি আমার দ্বিতীয় প্রশ্নটি করে ফেলি। আমরা দেখেছি নভেম্বর 75 সালে 3 তারিখে তো জেনারেল খালিদ মোশাররফ ক্ষমতা নিলেন। 3 তারিখে না হলে পরদিন আমরা দেখেছি একটা প্রসেশন বেরিয়েছে, যেটা মিরপুর রোড দিয়ে যাচ্ছে ঢাকা বঙ্গবন্ধুর বাড়িতে। এক পর্যায়ে কলাবাগানের এখানে রাশেদ মোশাররফ সাহেব এবং আপনার মা এটাতে যোগদান করলেন। তো তখন বুঝেছি যে জেনারেল খালিদ মোশাররফের মা খুবই রাজনীতি সচেতন। তিনি কি রাজনীতি সচেতন ছিলেন? মানে আপনাদের তিনি সেই প্রসেশনে আসবেন কেন সেই অবস্থাতে?
এটার উত্তর আমি দিতে পারি।
জি জি।
She was a great social worker, and probably because Sheikh Mujib at that moment he used to visit the house of General Khalid Mosharraf quite often, and he used to sit with them, talk to them about many things, apart from maybe what I do not know, I was not there, but maybe some state affairs, and thereby she became very close to Sheikh Mujib, and Sheikh Mujib used to call her sister, so they became very friendly, see, It was a very close relationship between the two families. So she must have thought that this is her duty to go and join the protest for somebody who
ওনাকে নিজের
was so
বোনের মতো
close.
মনে
উনি
করতেন।
নিজের বোনের মতন উনি
মনে
মনে
করতেন।
করতেন ওনাকে।
সেই জন্য উনি নিজের উদ্যোগেই, মানে অনেকে অনেক কিছু বলেছে ওটার এগেনস্টে, কিন্তু উনি বলছেন না, বঙ্গবন্ধুকে এরকম করে মানে এইভাবে নির্মমভাবে ওনার ফুল পরিবারকে হত্যা আমি ঘরে থাকতে পারছি না। উনি ওই ধরনের মহিলা, উনি ভীষণ ভীষণ মানে স্ট্রং মাইন্ডেড। সেই জন্য উনি গ্রুপ নিয়ে উনি ওনার বঙ্গবন্ধুর মহব্বতের চোটে, মানে ওনার ভালোবাসার চোটে উনি ওই রাস্তায়
All right, we have run out of time.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time, Badrul bhai, and thank you, Rina.
Thank you both. Thank you, and my thanks to Bhabi also
Thank
for
you,
being
sir.
on the program.
And I have a question that where were the so many hundreds and thousands of activists and leaders of Awami League when in this situation they should have come out too, but they were not there on the road. They were not to be seen. With that, I would like to end this program, and thank you very much for being with us. We hope that you enjoyed the show as much as we have. We thought that we have unfolded some of the secrets, some information that we wanted to share with you, some of our pangs, ethos. Do tune in again next week with another distinguished guest, hopefully. In the meantime, take care. We are going through very difficult times, so look after yourself. Thank you.
Thank you.
এখন তো হাত মেলানো না।